Beyond the gates. Spoilers, what if the greatest lie in Heather's entire story was spoken the very first moment she introduced herself? From the beginning, everyone accepted one simple claim as fact. Heather was Joey's sister. It sounded emotional, dramatic, and believable enough to lower every guard in the room. In a world built on fractured families, buried secrets, and old wounds that never fully heal, the arrival of a long-lost sibling should have felt like destiny. Joey, a man surrounded by enemies, betrayals, and dangerous alliances, was suddenly faced with someone who appeared to belong to his bloodline, someone who seemed to carry a missing piece of his past. But what if that identity was never the truth? What if Heather did not return to reconnect with Joey, reclaim her place in the family, or heal some childhood wound? What if she arrived with a mission that had been planned years before she ever stepped back into his life? If that theory is correct, then Joey never found a sister. He unknowingly opened the door to an enemy who knew exactly which name to use, which memories to exploit, and which emotional weakness would make him vulnerable. The most disturbing part of this theory is not one explosive clue or one shocking confrontation. It is the overwhelming absence of information. Heather's past has always been treated as something that exists just out of reach, mentioned enough to feel important but never explored deeply enough to become clear. For years, she was supposedly in London, living a life away from Joey, away from the people who could verify her history, and away from the emotional center of the story. But almost nothing concrete has ever been revealed about those missing years. Who raised her? Who paid for her life overseas? Did she live under the name Heather the entire time, or did she use another identity before appearing in Joey's world? Who knew her during that period? Was there anyone in London who could confirm where she came from, who her parents were, and why she remained hidden for so long? The story has avoided answering these questions with suspicious consistency. There have been no meaningful flashbacks that firmly establish her childhood connection to Joey. No official documents shown on screen that close the matter. No independent witnesses who can say with certainty what happened during her years away. That silence has become more than a gap in storytelling. It has become a possible hiding place for the truth. Because of that silence, viewers have begun asking a far more dangerous question. What if Heather did not return because she missed Joey at all? What if Joey himself was the target? When her actions are viewed through that lens, many moments that once seemed emotional begin to look calculated. Instead of behaving like someone desperate to rebuild a sibling bond, Heather often places herself in the exact position where she can observe Joey, influence him, and manipulate the trust of those around him. Claiming to be his sister would be the most effective disguise imaginable. It gives her immediate emotional access, grants her a reason to ask questions, allows her to cross boundaries that would otherwise raise suspicion, and makes anyone who doubts her seem cruel or paranoid. A stranger would have to earn trust slowly. A sister can demand it instantly. A rival would be watched. A relative would be protected. That is what makes the theory so unsettling. If Heather's identity is a lie, then every moment of closeness was not an attempt at connection. It was reconnaissance. Every emotional conversation may have been a test. Every vulnerable confession Joey made in her presence may have been another weapon placed quietly into her hands. This possibility leads directly into the most shocking version of the theory. What if Heather is not Joey's sister at all, but the secret daughter of Doug McBride? Doug has long existed as one of the most mysterious figures surrounding the larger story, a man whose past seems full of locked doors and unfinished explanations. Even when he is not physically present, his shadow feels heavy. He is the kind of character whose influence may reach farther than anyone wants to admit, and whose history may contain secrets capable of reshaping the lives of everyone connected to him. If Doug secretly had a daughter years ago, then many of the unanswered questions surrounding Heather suddenly begin to align. Her unexplained time in London could have been more than a convenient absence. It could have been the place where she was hidden, raised away from anyone who knew Doug's history, and prepared for a future role she did not fully understand at first. London may not have been a random chapter in her life. It may have been the staging ground for her return. It may have been where her identity was protected, where records were altered, where loyalties were formed, and where she learned enough about Joey to step into his life with confidence when the time was right. If Heather is Doug's daughter, then her motive changes completely. Joey would no longer be a brother she lost. He would become the living symbol of everything she believes was stolen from her. Depending on what Doug told her, Heather may see Joey as the reason her life was shaped by secrecy, abandonment, or exile. Perhaps Doug convinced her that Joey destroyed the future she should have had. Perhaps he told her that Joey benefited from a legacy that should have belonged to her. Perhaps he framed Joey as the villain of a family history that Heather only knows through Doug's version of events. Even if Doug abandoned Heather himself, he may have rewritten the story so convincingly that she grew up blaming the wrong person. In that case, her anger toward Joey would not be random. It would be the product of years of manipulation, emotional poisoning, and carefully planted resentment. Every confrontation would carry the weight of a childhood spent being told that someone else had taken her place. Every act of deception would feel, in her mind, like justice. Every betrayal would be justified by the belief that Joey had already betrayed her first, even if he never knew she existed. That is what makes this theory so powerful dramatically. It does not simply turn Heather into a villain. It gives her a wound. It gives her a reason. If she is Doug McBride's hidden daughter, then she may not see herself as an imposter or an enemy. She may see herself as the true victim finally returning to claim the truth that was denied to her. That emotional perspective would make her far more dangerous than someone motivated by money or simple revenge. A person seeking profit can be bought. A person seeking power can be negotiated with. But someone who believes her entire life was stolen cannot be easily stopped, because every obstacle only reinforces her sense of injustice. Joey's confusion would look like denial. His attempts to defend himself would sound like lies. His shock at her betrayal would mean nothing to her if she has spent years imagining him as the source of her suffering. Under this version of events, Heather's mission is not merely to hurt Joey. It is to make him understand what she believes he cost her. The forgotten years in London therefore become the heart of the mystery. If the truth exists anywhere, it is likely hidden in that unexplored period of Heather's life. A forgotten birth certificate, an adoption record, a school registration form, a hospital file, or even an old passport application could destroy everything the audience thinks it knows about her. One document could reveal a different surname. One witness could remember a child raised under Doug McBride's protection. One photograph could place Doug in London at the exact time Heather's history becomes unclear. One medical record could prove a biological connection that no one expected. The story has mentioned London repeatedly without fully opening that chapter, which feels increasingly suspicious. In soap storytelling, a location that is referenced but never explored often functions like a locked drawer. The writers may not open it immediately, but the audience is meant to remember that something is inside. If the narrative eventually returns to London through flashbacks, newly discovered documents, or the arrival of someone from Heather's past, her entire identity could collapse overnight. There are also smaller details that, while not proving anything on their own, continue to feed speculation. Heather entered the story with a background that feels strangely incomplete. No independent character has fully verified the truth of her family history. Her biological father has not been officially established in a way that eliminates doubt. The audience has not seen childhood memories strong enough to prove that she and Joey truly grew up as siblings. Most importantly, the missing London years remain almost undocumented within the story itself. Taken separately, each of these omissions could be dismissed as ordinary soap opera pacing. A show does not reveal every secret immediately, and some gaps exist simply because the plot has not reached them yet. But taken together, the pattern becomes difficult to ignore. Heather's identity is built on claims rather than evidence, on emotional acceptance rather than verified truth. And in a world where family names can be weaponized, that is dangerous. The theory becomes even more compelling when we examine the emotional advantage Heather gains by presenting herself as Joey's sister. Joey is not an easy man to reach. He is guarded, suspicious, and accustomed to living in a world where trust can become a fatal weakness. But family changes the rules. A sister is not simply another person asking for access. A sister represents blood, history, guilt, responsibility, and the possibility of redemption. If Joey carries unresolved pain from the past, Heather's arrival would immediately touch that wound. She would not need to break through his defenses by force. She would only need to stand in front of him and offer the one thing even a hardened man might secretly want: a chance to restore something lost. That is why the lie, if it is a lie, would be so effective. It does not attack Joey's strength. It attacks his longing. It uses his need for connection against him. From Heather's side, the disguise would also provide protection. Anyone who questions her motives risks appearing heartless. Anyone who investigates her too aggressively risks being accused of trying to destroy a family reunion. If Joey begins to doubt her, he may doubt himself first, especially if she knows how to use guilt against him. She could accuse him of rejecting her again. She could frame his suspicion as emotional cruelty. She could turn his desire to do the right thing into a trap. This is exactly why the sister identity would be the perfect cover for revenge. It creates a moral shield around her. People are less likely to challenge a woman who presents herself as abandoned, wounded, and finally returned home. By the time anyone realizes she may be manipulating that sympathy, she may already have gathered enough secrets to cause irreversible damage. If Doug McBride is involved, the story becomes even darker. It raises the possibility that Heather's entire return was not spontaneous but engineered. Doug may have spent years shaping her understanding of Joey, feeding her selective truths and strategic lies. He may have told her just enough to make her angry, but not enough to let her see the full picture. Perhaps Heather believes she is acting independently, unaware that she is still being used as a weapon in a conflict older than herself. That would add another tragic layer to her character. She may think she is avenging her own pain, when in reality she is continuing Doug's unfinished war. Doug, in that scenario, would not simply be her father. He would be the architect of her identity, the person who gave her a name, a target, and a purpose. And if he has been controlling the story from behind the scenes, then Heather's arrival may be only the first move in a much larger plan. The emotional consequences for Joey would be devastating. If he discovers that Heather is not his sister, the betrayal would be more than personal humiliation. It would force him to question every conversation they shared, every moment when he allowed himself to believe in her, every decision he made because of her presence. A man like Joey may be used to enemies attacking him openly, but this would be different. This would mean someone entered his life through the most intimate possible doorway and used the idea of family as a weapon. It would also reopen old wounds connected to trust, loyalty, and identity. Joey would not only ask why Heather lied, he would ask why he wanted so badly to believe her. That question could be more painful than the lie itself. For Heather, the truth could also become a turning point. If she learns that Doug manipulated her, or that Joey was never responsible for the suffering she blamed on him, her entire worldview could collapse. Revenge stories become most powerful when the avenger realizes too late that the foundation of her revenge was false. Heather may have sacrificed real relationships, destroyed innocent lives, and turned herself into someone unrecognizable in pursuit of a truth that was never true. If that happens, the show could push her into an emotional crisis far more interesting than simple exposure. Would she double down and refuse to admit she was wrong? Would she turn against Doug? Would she try to repair the damage with Joey, even after crossing lines that cannot easily be forgiven? Or would she become even more dangerous because the collapse of her mission leaves her with nothing to lose? The possibility of a hidden paternity reveal also connects perfectly to the show's larger themes. Beyond the Gates is built around secrets behind privilege, carefully protected public images, and families that appear powerful while hiding rot beneath the surface. A false sibling identity would fit that world beautifully. It would expose how easily status and bloodlines can be manipulated when people are desperate to protect appearances. It would also challenge the idea that family is defined only by what people claim. If Heather is not Joey's sister, then the emotional bond she tried to exploit becomes a lie. But if Joey once felt protective of her, even briefly, the fallout becomes complicated. Soap operas thrive in that gray area, where a deception can be unforgivable and emotionally real at the same time. There's another possibility that makes the theory even more layered. Heather may know only part of the truth. She may genuinely believe she is connected to Joey in some way, while the real biological facts are far more complicated. Perhaps Doug told her she was Joey's sister to hide that she was actually his daughter. Perhaps someone altered documents years ago, creating a false family history that Heather accepted as truth. In that version, Heather is both deceiver and deceived. She may have lied about her motives, but not about everything. She may have used Joey, but she may also be trapped inside a lie that was built before she had the power to question it. That would make the eventual reveal less of a simple villain unmasking, and more of a generational reckoning. The person who appears to be the manipulator may also be one of the victims. The key to unlocking this mystery will likely be evidence from outside the current circle of trust. Joey cannot solve it by relying only on instinct, because Heather's entire strategy depends on making his instincts unreliable. The truth will need to come from a source she cannot emotionally manipulate: an old record, a forgotten witness, a DNA test, a London contact, or someone connected to Doug's hidden past. A dramatic reveal could begin with something small, perhaps a document that lists a different guardian, or an old photograph showing Heather with someone Joey never expected. From there, the investigation could spiral. A name on a hospital record could lead to a private clinic. A school file could reveal who paid her tuition. A former caretaker could admit that Heather was never known as Joey's sister in London. Each clue would not simply expose a lie. It would rewrite the entire emotional foundation of her story. If the writers choose to pursue this direction, the reveal should not happen all at once. The most effective version would allow suspicion to build gradually. Joey might first notice inconsistencies in Heather's memories. She might describe a childhood event incorrectly, or fail to recognize a detail any true sibling would remember. Someone from London might appear and call her by another name. A financial trail might connect her directly to Doug. Heather, sensing the walls closing in, could become more aggressive, pushing Joey away from the truth while pretending to be wounded by his mistrust. That tension would create a gripping psychological battle. Joey would not know whether he is uncovering a conspiracy or betraying someone who truly needs him. Heather would not know how long she can maintain the mask before the past she buried begins speaking for itself. The final confrontation between Joey and Heather could become one of the most powerful scenes in the storyline. Imagine Joey standing before her with proof in his hand, no longer asking whether she lied, but demanding to know when the lie began. Heather might try to deny it at first, then shift to anger, then finally reveal the pain beneath the deception. She could accuse him of living the life that should have been hers, of benefiting from a family legacy while she was hidden away in London, of being protected while she was erased. Joey, stunned, might insist he never knew, that he never chose any of it, that she targeted the wrong man. But to Heather, that may not matter. Pain does not always care about facts when it has been fed resentment for years. The scene would not simply be about identity. It would be about two people realizing they have been trapped in different versions of the same history. Of course, it must be emphasized that this remains a fan theory, not confirmed truth. There is currently no official proof that Doug McBride is Heather's biological father, no confirmed evidence that her return was staged by him, and no definitive on-screen revelation proving that her sibling connection to Joey is false. But the reason the theory continues to gain attention is because it grows out of real narrative gaps. Heather's London years are too vague. Her family history is too thin. Her emotional access to Joey is too convenient. Doug's mystery is too unresolved. In a soap universe, these are not meaningless omissions. They are potential fuse lines waiting for a spark. If Heather truly is Doug McBride's secret daughter, then the story would not just expose a hidden parentage twist. It would transform the meaning of everything Heather has done since her arrival. Her lies would become strategy. Her pain would become motive. Her bond with Joey would become a weapon disguised as family. Joey's greatest mistake would not be trusting the wrong person in a business deal or underestimating a known enemy. His greatest mistake would be believing that blood had finally brought someone back to him, when in reality, the name sister may have been chosen precisely because it was the one word powerful enough to make him vulnerable. And if that is true, then Heather's introduction was not the beginning of a reunion. It was the first move in a revenge plot years in the making, one that could expose Doug's darkest secret, destroy Joey's sense of family, and prove that the most dangerous enemy is not the one who attacks from outside the gates, but the one who is invited in and welcomed as blood. The most haunting question, then, is not simply whether Heather lied. It is how many lives were built around that lie before anyone thought to challenge it. If the truth is buried in London, if Doug's name is hidden somewhere in a forgotten file, and if Joey has been manipulated from the moment Heather entered his world, then the eventual reveal could tear through the story like a storm. It would force everyone to reconsider what they accepted, what they ignored, and who benefited from keeping Heather's past incomplete. In a world where powerful families survive by controlling the narrative, Heather may be the living proof that the past never stays locked away forever. Whether she is a daughter seeking justice, a pawn shaped by Doug McBride, or a calculating enemy who chose the perfect disguise, one thing is clear. The mystery surrounding her identity has become too large to ignore. And if the show finally opens the door to her missing years, Joey may discover that the person he thought he had regained was never lost at all. She was sent